66th episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the last week of October 2011. This episode is titled Chatter Gets Plussed. CloudFocus Weekly is sponsored by Arkus, your cloud computing experts. And I'm your host, Jason Atwood. Joining me for the 66th time in a row, a new record, is the co-host of the podcast for now, Justin Elstein. Justin, how you doing?
I love when
you look
job
at me.
Security.
How many have we done? And I do that almost every week. And every week you look at me
For now?
For now?
Like a new record.
You got to keep
every week. We set a new record.
You got to keep on your game.
I'm ready. When you say Chatter gets plussed, I wonder what you mean. Do you mean new features in Chatter? Do you mean something else? I wonder what you mean.
Well, let's talk about our agenda, and then we'll get right into it.
Let's get right into it.
All right. So, there's Google Apps. Google Plus is now available for apps. Google Plus, a competitor to Chatter. Chatter gets plussed.
Oh.
I have a blog post about Chatter, so that kind of worked that in. So Google Plus, Chatter.
All right.
And then we're going to talk about Dropbox for Teams and Twitter ads from celebrities.
Yeah.
Interesting one.
I threw that one in there.
Yeah, you did. And we got our CloudFocus app pick of the week. I can see them right here in our Google Wave. Get it out of the way. Just want to get it out of the way real quick.
We have Google Plus. We're going to talk about Google for the enterprise. Wave probably would have
made it. Could have left it. And then that's it. We'll end the podcast. So let's get started with the start, which is announced literally hours ago.
Yeah.
Which is that Google Plus, the social networking competitor to Facebook and Twitter, provided by Google, is now available for apps. And the reason I say this that Chatter gets Plus is because it's sort of, as a enterprise customer or someone who uses Google Apps in the enterprise, using the email and calendaring, contacts and docs and all that, you weren't able to use the Google Plus feature. And Google Plus actually has the concepts of statuses and updates and feeds and following and profiles, all the sort of things that Chatter does. In fact, if you were then to say, well, I'm working in Google Docs, I'm working in Google Sheets, I'm working in Google Keynote or Google Slides, whatever the heck they call that one, and then I have this social profile fee, ability to post things back and forth, you could see that it is sort of coming to head with Chatter in a small way to start, but I think probably more and more as we go on. Thoughts, opinions?
Yeah, it actually annoys me a little bit that this came out later. I wish it would have came out at the same time, because right now there are two Justin Edelsteins floating around in Google Plus.
That is one too many.
And you're right, it is one too many. They have the same picture. They have the same, some people in the same circles. I don't know which one to use. I'm a little confused. Like, when it comes to some of these other ones, like Chatter or some of the other social networks that are meant for enterprises, Yammer comes to mind. There's one of you, and it's the one.
Well, then if I brought up Twitter and I said, how many Twitter accounts do you have?
Well, there's one Justin Edelstein Twitter account.
Right. So, but
there are other Twitter accounts, but they're not Justin Edelstein with the same picture and the same... Like, that's the hard part.
So what you're saying is you need another picture.
Well, sure, another picture. But the hard part is that they're sort of public. And you can't say, well, I want to get silly, like where I've talked about circles in the past, and not Google Plus circles, because I actually wrote about this before Google Plus circles came out. But, like, my Facebook's where I get a little sillier with my posts. My other Twitter accounts might be for other things. My professional Justin Edelstein persona that I want to put out there in the world, the one that you guys hear from a week-to-week basis on this podcast, is the Just Edelstein Twitter account. And that, it makes it easier for me to manage. I think this actually crosses... Twitter plug. This actually crosses a line, I think, because if you go on Google Plus now and you look for me, you're going to find two of me.
Yeah.
And one of me is one thing and one of me is the other.
I'll tell you, one of me is going to disappear very quickly.
Yeah, one of me is absolutely disappearing. My personal one's gone.
I think
Forget
my
it.
personal one might change to something else.
My personal one's changing to no one can find this unless you're in my circles.
Yeah. And again, I wasn't a big user of Google Plus anyway. I kept trying and I kept going back to it. I'm not a big Google Apps user outside of Arkus. inside of Arkus, huge Google Apps user.
Right.
Outside of Arkus, not a really
That
big
was
deal.
the
Don't use
same
Gmail.
thing for me.
The only thing I use is Reader, which
Right.
Reader now, and that's the other news that I could pop up, which is that Reader and Google Plus are going to be connected
Good, they should be.
in a bigger way.
Great.
I agree, they should be. Now I'm looking at it and going,
I want to just pull feeds right into my Plus stream.
You will be able to.
Good, because I don't really go to Reader anymore because I use Facebook. I follow things. I use Twitter. I follow things, or I like things on Facebook. I follow things on Twitter. I don't go to Reader anymore because the stories I want to read just sort of come to me, and it's like retelling the story of the social enterprise a little bit. The things you care about come to you. You don't have to go look for them. Whatever.
Yeah,
But
I
the
totally
Google thing to me. I have to like open another browser if I want to go use Google Plus because I'm logged in on Safari and Chrome. I'm logged in as the Arkus account.
It's the Arkus Justin.
The Firefox browser is relegated to Google other Justin because it was very frustrating. You go to Google Plus to try and do something. Oh, I can't do it in this browser because I'm logged in as. And I don't want to log out and log in and then log in and log out.
So let's bring the conversation back to where this sits. No, I want to talk more about, as we know, we have a lot of Salesforce user customers, whatever, followers. Where on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a huge threat to Chatter, 1 being absolutely no threat, where is Google Plus for apps now a threat to Chatter on 1 to 10 scale?
2.
2?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't think that people in the beginning will trust its security model to completely just say this is what we're using internally for networking, and because it's super easy to just throw someone from external into your circle there. I don't know what you can do from the administrator side because I haven't looked at it. I've just signed up as a user.
You basically turn people on, and once they're on, they can do it.
Yeah, so then, all right, well, that's kind of easy to go grab somebody from the outside or have somebody from the outside grab you and be able to see things that you're doing. 2, I don't think it has the contextual juiciness that Chatter has of being able to do things in context of the work that you're doing. Until they connect more of the Google Apps empire that it is, right? Yeah. Until I could throw a doc out onto Google Plus and collaborate in that way. Until I can throw a sheet out there onto Google Plus and then invite people to the sheet via Google Plus and start working on it in real time. That's when it might become more of a threat. But for now, it's really just like Yammer or any other, where I think Chatter still wins is that it's sitting on the app.
And this one, the thing that I think is going to be scary for most people is that most of these communities are walled communities. Chatter's a walled community inside of.
You can open it up; it's optional, but you can turn that option off for people. Well, like you can say, "Open this up, invite whoever you want to Chatter."
I cannot be sitting in my org and go to post a post in Chatter and then say, "Oh, and launch this to a public view."
No, you would have to invite somebody in, and that would invite them in.
That's completely different than going to a window and typing in, "Hey, we just landed a big contract with Apple today," and not see that I'm publishing to public versus private.
That's why I put it as a 2.
I think it's more because Google has, what was it, 500 companies a day or a month are signing up in Google Apps. They hit
a big benchmark earlier in the week or last week. It was some crazy number in the millions of customers. I think it was like 15 million customers, something like that. It was a big benchmark. It was David Gerard.
So where Salesforce is at about 100,000 customers, Google's at 15 million. You got to think that by doing this, by having this ability, and again, I think they could easily take the lessons of Yammer and Salesforce and Chatter and go, let's build it into some of the tools that are already. I think right now it feels like a little bit of it's like my corporate Twitter account, kind of like here's an account that you kind of can use as an external
like
view.
Yammer, but
Yammer didn't have an external view to it.
It could get interesting if you thought about using Google all in, and you said my intranet's built on Google Insights, and we're all in on the webmail. We're all in. We're using the intranet. We're using the search appliance. We're doing all sorts of stuff with Google in the enterprise. And you start plus oneing things, and you start. I don't even see Buzz here in this corporate
Buzz
version.
is going away.
All right, so and you incorporate some of the other apps. Like again, I think it'd be interesting to start up a doc and then throw it out into Plus and throw a circle around it and say, executive briefing, whatever,
and then have a whatever,
meeting around
they
it,
call
a huddle, right? You can see that happening, but I think it's a long way off.
I don't think
people work that way
just
either.
because all the technology is there. I think it's closer than you think, and it already has the weird time of aware. It already has real time, which is yet to come to
right.
Chatter, which is.
I just don't think people work that way.
It already has sharing, much better sharing, because Google Docs has better sharing. I can share out to other people very quickly, so I think they have a lot of advantages. But anyway, I kind of think so. Going into the next part, which is a good segue, as we like to say, is my new blog post. Posted maybe minutes before this podcast, which is called Getting Lost and Found in Chatter. Something I've been thinking about for a while. We were actually talking to some people at Salesforce who have something to do with Chatter. I'm not going to mention names. And, they were asking sort of...
You can't mention names, but you can mention Twitter handles if you want.
No, I'm not. Twitter plug. Jason M. Atwood, Twitter plug. And we were basically saying, well, what's, they were being asked the question, you guys are big Chatter users, you help clients get up and use on Chatter, I've helped clients move to using it as their intranet. What is the thing that, what's missing from it? And I went into sort of a little spiel about, productivity and email and inbox zero, and basically that Chatter, and this is the same thing as Twitter and Facebook, but Twitter and Facebook are not productivity. I don't use Twitter and Facebook to get work done. I use them to, see things, but I don't collaborate with people. I don't go in and say, I need an update on this project at Twitter, right? But Chatter is meant for that. Chatter is meant for productivity. Chatter is meant for work. And here's one of the things that you don't have. You don't have that kind of guaranteed delivery that you have in email. You don't have a read state. So I basically wrote a blog post saying, okay, here's the problems. You don't have these things. Here's ways you can help fix it. Here's some best practices, things that we've learned from using it. Using mentions, using better sorting, using groups. And then finally, I said at the end, if it's really urgent and it's really important, don't put it in Chatter. And we have that policy here. It's like, don't use Chatter for the thing, world's going to explode, don't go put it in Chatter. Use the communication device that's going to get you the fastest thing. That's the phone, and then the text, and then the email, right? There's a list, and Chatter's down underneath email in terms of how to guess it. So anyway, go to blog.arkusinc.com. You can read all about it.
You're not going to ask my opinion? You don't care?
Sure.
I don't care what I think about your
Sure,
blog
I
post.
want to hear all about it.
No, you don't. I don't think you do.
Oh, I really do.
No, I don't.
I'm going to edit it back in. Wait, hold on. I just edited out that last section. Now I'm going to say, hey, what do you think about the blog post?
Well, I think the most interesting thing that you write about is the whole read state and the sorting. So, you're right. If you go away for, in some orgs that are large, if you go away for a day, but let's just say, in an organization of 15 people, and you go away for a week, and you're heavy Chatter users, you are bound to miss something, because if you're heavy users, there's a lot of communication happening within Chatter, and when you get back, you don't know what you missed. You don't know.
Right.
You can sort of say, use the sort by post and comment date, and then scroll all the way back to the day you left. That's kind of hard, right? It's not like email where you go in, you say, 89 unread messages, and they're bold. And the ones that you haven't read are bold. And when you read them, they're not bold. And that's that, right?
And that works across every device. Every email client on the planet works that way. So, it's...
web apps, clients,
anywhere.
Mobile,
right?
It works that way. The caveat...
read it on one place, and it's read on another place.
That's the caveat, slightly, where they might be getting there, is the whole private messaging thing. While it's not prevalent enough throughout the entire application, but in Winter 12, and maybe before then, but we were in the pilot, I don't know. Winter 12, I think, private messages were GA. And those have those things. Those do have read states. They do have, little notifications. But they're slightly hidden. They're in the Chatter tab. They're in a little corner.
Right.
They need to be...
slightly hidden is like saying...
they're in one place.
Like saying this country's slightly in debt. It's
slightly.
Slightly.
Let's not get political.
Okay.
But those messages have that state and that,
right,
read, unread, who's in it, how many do you have, things of that nature. But that's not Chatter, right?
Well,
Chatter is bigger, way bigger than that. That's a little portion of
but
Chatter.
In order for Chatter to go to the next level, to I think a real productivity tool, it needs to have those things, or at least ways around it. And again, I've heard people talk about, well, in Twitter, when you go in, I find it the biggest problem with Twitter too. It's like when I go into Twitter, unless I stay in Twitter all day long.
Oh yeah, it's a fire hose.
Yeah, it's a fire hose, and you're basically drinking from it all the time. It's like, well, you're not gonna do it.
Some clients, the mobile client, I mean, it cuts it, and the desktop client just cuts.
Yeah,
it's like, you know what? You've had this many messages over the last 9 hours. You haven't looked at it. I'm just cutting it to the last hour. Forget it. You're missing those 8 hours.
Yeah.
You're not getting it.
And if those were important things,
right.
So again, one of the big things I say was use mentions, because mentions, at least, they show up in different spots within the Chatter applications. You can always go to an @ me section. Right. They also almost always send out an email. I think that was sort of the thing that I was coming up as I was writing it was, Chatter is a lot about user preference, where email isn't.
It's a lot about user preference.
Right.
And we know users, and they don't set preferences.
Right. You don't go and say to me, I will or will not receive emails. You receive emails because you have an email address, and that's your user preference. This is like, well, I can turn it on if I receive a mention, if I don't, if I receive something
Someone
that I follow.
comments after something I've already commented on, stuff like that.
Great granularity.
Very good, but most users don't even look at it. They don't even know it's there.
Or they don't understand, and I've heard this from a lot of users, they don't understand why I will or will not get alerted. What shows up in my feed? And you basically have to say, well, if you follow something, if you follow somebody, if you did that. So anyway, read the post. I think it's kind of interesting. Again, something I've been thinking about for a while, and my turn came up, so we went for it. All right, so 2 more things. Let's talk about a small thing about Dropbox. We've talked about Dropbox before. I think we've picked it.
Sure.
They've now launched a Teams edition, which is basically their ability to say, hey, listen, you like Dropbox, and you want to put all your files there. We use something similar, which we've talked about. We use Jungle Disk, which is a competitor, I guess. It's owned by Rackspace. It's hosted in Rackspace files, and basically you have a drive on your desktop that is a virtual drive, but then it's shared. So whenever you go into it, whatever's in there is everybody can see who can see that drive, whatever. But it's great because you can work from anywhere and just so this is the same, except for this actually syncs now. And I think it's really cool. Like, I went and I read about it. It basically does the things that I like. They have a great client, as we know. They have a great iPhone app. They have a great
Tell me why this is different than having a Dropbox account and just having people in my folders that are shared.
Why is it different?
Yeah, like right now,
because
we both have Dropbox accounts.
Right.
And
we don't see each other.
We don't see each other. What do you mean we don't see each other?
This would be, we could set up ones that just by logging into Dropbox, we would see certain folders.
You wouldn't have to share a folder with me.
It wouldn't
be auto shared.
Right.
That's it. That's the difference.
Well, and it's unlimited for everybody in the team. Unlimited data, so that's huge.
It's one price for a team or one price per person?
So it's $7.95 per year per 5 people. $135 per. Yeah, it's not that much.
My face was like, let's buy that and just play with it.
Oh, your mouth. Oh, I thought you were like, wait, that sounds like a lot.
No, it really doesn't.
It's $13 a month per person.
That's like nothing.
It's not bad. I would tell you that Rackspace's Jungle Disk, it's like $4 per person.
Right.
So that's
no
the difference.
Offline access though. That's the big key here, right?
No offline access. It doesn't sync.
Syncs
whatever's
the
up
data
there is
down.
up there. This actually syncs the data down. Yeah. Although you can sync in Jungle Disk.
So is it sitting on my? Is it sitting on my machine?
Yeah, just like Dropbox is. You could do.
Gotcha.
Can disconnect. So anyway, an interesting thing. I think more interesting is what came up about Dropbox. The founders of it started talking about how they were approached by Apple, and Apple was going to buy them.
Dropbox would be a much better version of the iDisk. That
Merlin Mann used to say this all
anymore,
the time. Merlin used to say they should just buy Dropbox. They tried. In other words, Apple tried. They had corporate meetings. Steve Jobs went and met the founders. They said they handed them a virtual check, and they said, I think it was, top end of 6 digits, and they were talking $600-700 million, and up to like I think $900 million was the total. And they said no, they didn't want to go for it.
That's a lot more than 6 digits.
$9 million, $900 million.
That's like 9 digits. 6, 7, 8 zeros. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you are.
I'm not
wrong. I'm wrong. You're right.
You're wrong.
I'm thinking 900,000. They were offered $900,000. I don't know why they didn't take it.
I don't know why you wouldn't take $900,000 when $900 million are on the table.
9 digits. That's right. It was high 9 digits. So, and
if
they
you
said,
want to include the decimals in there, it's 11 digits.
Apple came in, gave them a whole speech. They talked about funding. They talked about it's better to be owned by us. Better we will and but basically they didn't do it, which is interesting. I'm not. We'll see in the end. Like
in the end. Will probably be a bad choice.
It probably, because Apple said we're going into this space, and they did with iCloud. They're going to continue. That's just their first salvo. They're going to continue. My guess is they're going to do pretty well.
And lots of other people are in this space too.
But interesting, Dropbox going for the more, because when we looked to Jungle Disk, they didn't have this sort of floating around. They had something like a shared one, but just didn't work as much. So this is I think a good offering. So last story before we get on to our CloudFocus pick of the week is Twitter ads from celebs. What is this?
Well, this was something that caught my eye on Mashable a couple of days ago. And it's something that caught my eye because I had read about this previously where celebrities who have a large following on Twitter get paid to sometimes just tweet about a product. Like I've seen it with like a Kardashian sister will get paid like 10 grand for a tweet about something. And I'm like, damn, how do I get that job, right? Like, you have millions of followers. It's targeted. You sort of get an idea based on who the person is, like what type of person's following them. And you know that, well, it's not guaranteed to hit that many eyeballs, but you're going to hit a bunch of eyeballs.
So I know Charlie Sheen was one of the first that they...
Yeah, a lot of people have been doing this. Now, I found this one interesting because this is Rainn Wilson of The Office, Dwight Schrute.
Oh, yeah.
And
I was like, who the heck is Wayne?
Oh, yeah, Dwight Schrute of The Office. And... he accidentally meant to send a private tweet to his assistant named Joanne. We know because we have screenshots of the tweets saying, "Tell at Del Taco I will accept $12,000 to plug their S-word food." See how I did that? S-word?
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks, Rainn. And he meant to do that as a private
message.
message.
Did you spell his name with 2 N's?
I guess so.
Side note, that's crappy.
Yeah, well, not his choice.
It's at Rainn Wilson. Twitter plug.
Right. So anyway, he meant that to be a direct message, I guess. Why he didn't do that over email is beyond me.
Because some people don't read our posts.
That's ridiculous. But anyway, he then had to put out a tweet a couple minutes later. "Please disregard last tweet. Was a private text to my assistant."
And why was it text? You should have used text.
I don't know. Twitter, but then a couple minutes later, or so it would seem in this timeline, he writes, "Loving the new at Del Taco Macho Bel Grande burrito. It's beef-tacular." Trademark. So I just find it interesting that this is a thing that's happening, that celebrities who have large followings on Twitter get paid money to do this, which is literally 2 seconds of their time. Phenomenal use of marketing dollars. And secondly, that there could be such a snafu out there, and I feel like this is going to cause a little bit of a backlash around this type of advertising, because it really cuts through it's not really very transparent anyway, like in the first place. Like sometimes these things could be genuine, but you might really love a Big Mac, right? And you're right, I'm eating a Big Mac, I love these things,
right?
And other times, you are paid $12,000 by McDonald's to write that.
Yeah. And
I feel like this will add a whole level of skepticism to this kind of marketing that is probably unnecessary.
And it's the same, it's a little bit the same that's been following, you and I both read way too many Twitter books, or books on Twitter and social networking. And one of the things they talk about is when you're doing a corporate Twitter account or a professional Twitter account, what is your message? Are you a person or are you a thing? And so some companies, they take their corporate Twitter account and they're a thing. It's a thing talking to you, but you can interact with the thing. There's actually people behind it, and they're more of like, listen, we're just using this account, but we are actually people behind it, and it's sort of a little bit different. I think people have understood now. There are sort of like at Arkus Inc. It's not a person; it's a company,
right?
But it will say thank you if you tweet against it.
Sure will.
Twitter plug. And
how many of those are you going to do today?
A lot.
By the way, we are not getting paid by Del Taco.
No.
I just want to throw that out.
At Del Taco, Twitter plug. But so I think people are starting to get that, and they get that.
But this is a person.
No, I know. So I'm saying this. I agree. This kind of mixes the whole thing up. Advertisers get paid to make endorsements all the time. We feel like, I think that, what consumers like to think, and as a consumer as well, I like to think I know when someone's sitting in front of a McDonald's with a camera and goes, "I love McDonald's," right? I know that difference between that and hearing Merlin Mann talk about something he really likes because he uses it, right? Because there's a trust on one factor. It's like, I trust that person. I think they're great. I know that he's saying he likes it because he uses it, versus I know that guy's getting paid to say he likes McDonald's. He does or does not, it doesn't matter. It disqualifies what he's saying. So you're right. This is going to mix that. The only thing I think will hurt is really, celebrity Twitter accounts that sort of start to do this. And will people start to say unfollow them and make them not popular and block them and just say, listen, if you're just going to sell out, then the reason I followed you or your Twitter account is
because you're you.
So I can get personal with you.
Right.
I can follow your thoughts. I can hear what you're doing and hear what you're up to, and I like your humor or whatever. But if you're going to become an advertising machine, well, then I'll just not pay attention.
And there's nothing wrong with doing this. Meaning, there's nothing wrong with saying that you love the Macho Bel Grande burrito. Because you know what? You might actually love it. What's wrong is that you said it was S-word. You said it was S-word publicly.
Right.
And then you went ahead anyway and said how much you were loving it. So it's completely against the whole, well, you know what? I know, Peyton Manning is a sponsor or is a spokesperson for Gatorade. And I also watch him drink Gatorade on a sideline. He probably has to drink it because that's the only drink he's allowed to drink. But still, I know he's at least using it, right? I know he's sitting there drinking Gatorade.
Otherwise, he would starve. He would die.
Or at least he's drinking some liquid in a Gatorade bottle, right? So, but in this case, it's so impersonal. It's like, he's loving this burrito. Is he eating this burrito? Does he even know what it tastes like? I find it
he
really.
Wrote it's beef-tacular.
Of course he did, and then he trademarked it.
But that's obviously he's been eating
Clearly.
it. It's beef-tacular.
I just find that this is a murky zone where advertisers are just trying to get in on something without really thinking it through 100% of what the ramifications of doing this are.
I think there's no problem. The advertisers. Listen, there's no thinking things through. They will paint logos on the moon eventually. It'll happen. It's just a matter of whether someone lets them do it, right? Advertisers will do anything. The reality is, when I went to college and they used to say, you saw the thing that stuck with me for the amount of years, is that you saw 500 ads a day, you remembered 12, you liked 6. So the 500, so that's from ads in magazines and paper and billboard. That number now is.
We work in Times Square. That's like 1 million.
I can walk in. I walk in my office. I see 500 in 1 second, and so the reality is that advertisers are just looking for new places to advertise. It's getting crazy. I mean, you watch. I love it on TV where you're watching a TV show and there's we watch football. I watch a lot of football, and it's like the halftime report. This first down brought to you by Pepsi.
Well, the worst is actually, we're going off on a little bit of a tangent, but the worst, if you really want to hear some obnoxious advertising, is listening to a Yankee game on the radio, because seemingly every single thing that happens in the game is sponsored by somebody. The 15th out is sponsored by Geico, which can save you time. 15 minutes can save you whatever. The Verizon call to the bullpen, the this, the that, the third inning, the first out, the first run, everything. It's almost annoying to listen. Well, it is annoying to listen to, I will say.
But
anyway.
But the problem is with DVR, with all the choices we have in terms of making to looking at stuff anymore. I'm looking at a web page and we can
turn ads off on web pages now. Use that little reader button. Get me to the content. Turn the ads off.
It's true.
So advertisers are always going to look for something different. This is a foray into the social advertising space as opposed to paying Twitter. They're paying the person who's using Twitter as a vehicle. Interesting We'll see how that goes with Twitter down the line.
If I'm Twitter, I'd want to cut.
I am peeved at this. I'm like, you are using my platform to pay people $12,000. Where's my cut?
Yeah, I want my cut.
Because you know what? You do that again, you're off. You're done.
No,
you're gone. No, they never do it. It's just something that's like, how does Twitter get a little scratch off of this?
They need to. And they're starting to do ads. Ads are coming up in between
Sure,
things.
you could sponsor a tweet. You could sponsor a topic and get a tweet to the top of a top of a trending topic. You could, topic writing, whatever. But I'm interested to see how they'll figure this.
Yeah, no, totally. All right, so speaking
of... a good little tangent, no? I thought that
awesome.
was it. Threw that in the wave. That was good.
So speaking of corporate plugs...
Yeah.
Let's make some CloudFocus app pick the weeks. We've never been paid to make any of these picks.
That's right.
Have we? Wait.
No.
65 times. I've never been paid.
No, never been paid. I'm picking a free app on the App Exchange, which came out this week. Or just last week.
Force.com Labs?
No. This is from Cloud for Good.
Okay.
Fellow Salesforce MVP, Tal Frankfurt.
Hey, Tal.
Who is behind Cloud for Good. I believe he's the CEO.
What's his Twitter account?
It's Tall. I think it's like Tal Frankfurt. I'm gonna have to look at it.
Tal Frankfurt?
I'll have to find it. I'll find it when you're talking about your tweet. Cloud for Good basically does a lot of nonprofit consulting, and they put an app out on the App Exchange called Donation Split. And this is really useful for anyone who's worked with a development team or a fundraising team at a not-for-profit, or has done any consulting work and put together a fundraising system. Oftentimes, non-for-profits have multiple programs that they're funding through their donors. And donors give money and they say, you can use it for this reason. Most of the time you want unrestricted, because then you can use it for whatever you want. But sometimes people have interests in specific programs. And when you're putting together, even with the Nonprofit Starter Pack, which does a great job of giving you a good template, you still have to create like some sort of product allocation where you have to say, this donation came in for, let's just throw a round number out there, $1 million. And I want you to use $250,000 of it for this program in this year.
Right.
And I want you to use $250,000 of it for that same program in the next year. And I want you to use $250,000 of it for this other program in this year, and $250,000 of it, over and over. And you have to build out a model to sort of capture that. And what Cloud for Good has done here is put that together, or at least it would seem that way. I haven't actually installed it or used it yet, but it's intriguing enough for me.
Par for the course.
Par for the course, but it's intriguing enough for me to look at and say, wow, Cloud for Good has done a lot of the work here for me, where I don't have to build out these allocation or splits or designation records, and they've put a nice little, what looks like a Visual Force UI to split it out nice and easy. And it looks like they've even used some Google charting APIs to bring back some visualizations of where these dollars are being used, what year, how much, etc. So donation split. Next time I have a non-for-profit development project, I will be installing this to play around with it and see if it works for them.
Awesome.
Yeah, free. Find it on the App Exchange.
I like free.
Free.
And a Salesforce pick. I'm going to pick
Free.
a non-one. I actually went to see if I'd picked this before. I feel like I have, or I've talked about it. But since this is it's an update to something that's out there and it just came out, I feel like I'll make it work. Which is, I've talked about using financial software. QuickBooks. We hear a lot about QuickBooks. I use Quicken and QuickBooks. I've been tweeted about trying to find a Quicken replacement. Well, one of the things that was a replacement until Intuit bought it was something called Mint. And Mint is an online application, or what still is an online application, where you go in and you put in all your username and passwords for all your different financial sites, and it goes and it pulls in all the data and then automatically categorizes it all together. So you'll see restaurants and put them into restaurant spending and whatever. It does a lot of stuff automatically. And
I'm a user.
Yes, you are. And so there's two things that I think that it's not been able to do in the past, and one is a new feature they added, and the other is sort of an update. You can now put in things in the future. So what I've always said about, if you have a bank account with $1,000 and you write a check for $500 to somebody, and then you give that check to somebody. You go to look at your bank account the next day. Your bank account still says $1,000. Well, it doesn't. You don't have $1,000. You have $500 because you wrote that check. But because these things are sort of reactionary, meaning they're always reading what happened, if that person doesn't deposit that check for 5 or 6 days, you still think you have $1,000. Now, that's a very simple example, but times that times 30, 40 checks in a complex financial situation. So Mint never was that. Well, now they have the ability to add in transactions that haven't happened yet. So then it'll take away from your accounts and show you what your true balance is. That's cool. And what they did is they upgraded their iOS app, which is now universal, which I love. I love when they take an app and they make it universal. That's my favorite thing, like, because it's like the same app but it works on both, and it's a great app. It's got some really, on the iPad, it's got some really great like touching, and you can spin things around and see things in different way. I would show it to you, except for it is actually my account. But you can drill in on stuff. You can actually categorize.
Trying to say you're not going to show me your finances?
No, I'm not going to show my finances. You can drag and drop.
Do you want to take a screenshot and just put it on the blog or something?
Yeah, I'll just do that.
Okay.
You can drag and drop the dates of date ranges you want to look at stuff. It's a really nice tool for the iPad. It does have a security code, so you can obviously protect it. But it's Mint for the iOS. It's a universal app now. Works on the iPhone and the iPad.
Oh my goodness. I just checked my email, and I literally just got an email from Mint 2 minutes ago announcing Mint for iPad.
I'm glad you're paying attention to me while I was making my pick or
that
checking email.
Sick.
Wait, what?
No, I just came in. Look at that. I got the Mint announcing Mint for iPad as you were talking about it.
All right. Well, that's
serendipitous.
Maybe.
Is that a word?
No. It is not. So that's it. Those are CloudFocus app picks of the week. If you have CloudFocus app picks and you want us to look at something, hit us up on Twitter. Hit Justin up at Just Edelstein, and I'm at Jason M. Atwood, both on the Twitter plug. Twitter plug for the company, Arkus Inc., ARKUSINC. If you want to read all the blog posts or go see all the episodes and comment on them, you can now comment on using a thing called Discuss, which is pretty all over the place. You can comment on our blog. I actually saw you got another comment the other day on your permission sets blog post.
Yeah.
So another one like literally today.
Oh, another one?
Yep, another one.
There's so many I can't even keep up.
There you go. And so go to blog.arkusinc.com. You'll see all the list, and you can drill in and then comment from there. Of course, we're on Facebook /ArkusInc. Hopefully, we'll be on Google Plus soon if they announce that. And in iTunes for the podcast, go in, subscribe, leave a review. We love that because we change up our days. We're doing it on Thursday, which is sort of our normal slot, but we do change it up. We try to do Thursday. Sometimes Tuesdays. Who knows? And leave a review. We just love that. So then, until next week, we'll be back probably on Thursday. We will try again. Until that time, enjoy those cloudy days.